Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 3 Episode 12. It's called War of the Coprophages. I think that's how you pronounce that anyway. So spoilers for the episode as always, and I'm excited to be back with X-Files again here at the start of 2026. And what an episode they gave me to kick off with. This is one of the weirdest, silliest, outrageous episodes that we've had. And I might have loved it for that reason, but not because it was necessarily good. It was just entertaining. So I guess we're getting into the year with a wild energy, I guess I'll say. This episode, like, starts off kind of with a kind of an interesting, like, oh, cockroaches are killing people or something that looks like that anyway. And then it kind of has this weird thing where Scully's not there for most of the episode, but she's constantly being phoned by Mulder while she's at home. And it's not like she's got a subplot. It's not like she's doing something in her personal life that means she can't be there, so he's constantly interrupting. No, she's like cleaning her gun in one scene, she's eating ice cream in another, she's reading a book, she's doing just stuff around the house. She's just chilling. And I wasn't really sure why she isn't just there with him for the most part, although it kinda has a reason as it goes on, which ties into another like weird turn this episode takes, because this episode goes from cockroaches killing people, Mulder just happens to be in the town for another reason, right? Because there was UFO sightings reported and he has to go and look at that with his time off. In fact, he says that his building was being fumigated, so it even kind of ties in thematically to what the episode's going to be about. And he just happens to be in the town. Several people start turning up dead. In fact, must be one of the highest body counts of any X-Files episode. Like, these cockroaches keep killing people left and right, and over the course of just a couple of days, it feels like. So there's a lot of that going on. But as the episode then progresses, we get a sexy scientist who loves insects that Mulder starts like kind of flirting with, or at the very least having sexual tension, which leads to Scully having this weird instant like jealous reaction, which kind of feels a little bit like over the top given like what their relationship's been up until this point. Not on, again, entertaining, but kind of wild, and part of the wildness is why it was so entertaining. But then there's also robots and robot insects maybe, and like wild theories of like robot insects being sent from aliens to harvest methane from shit. And then to cap it all off, we get an explosion at the end which covers both Mulder and Scully in shit, like, you know, all the various rare forms of dung that this lab had on hand because they were doing methane extraction experiments or something, and it explodes and they get covered in various exotic forms of shit. That like this episode, I've not even gotten to the town panic yet, and like the weird scene with Scully in the supermarket when everyone's freaking out. Like, there's just so much shit going on in this episode, both literal and figuratively. It's kind of nuts, but to be fair to it, it kept moving, and just when the silliness that I got used to was starting to maybe feel old, like, okay, this is kind of wild, cockroaches killing people, that's kind of fun, but okay, we've seen it done like 3 times now, I'm starting to maybe, you know, settle out of it a little bit and not feel as entertained. Then it throws in another element that immediately makes me start laughing. Like, this is legitimately one of the funniest episodes of this show. And there's a couple of lines that are intentionally funny, like they definitely are intentionally funny. They're playing it up for laughs. Some of it is just funny because of like the weird tropes they're going through. I've not even mentioned that there's another scientist, an old guy, who's got a voice box, kind of Stephen Hawking style, not exactly, but kinda. And as soon as I heard his voice, as soon as I heard this like scientist wheel in, and he's got this kind of the robotic voice from the voice box, I started laughing, not because he was funny in and of himself, but just because it felt like the episode was going through so many like super 90s tropes. Like, when Mulder goes investigating like this lab that might be doing like research in secret, and he's sneaking around and the light turns on and he acts all shocked when someone walks in, and it cuts to Scully who's on the phone with him and she's like, Mulder, what is it? What is it? And he kind of just hangs up quickly and says he has to go, and then the camera finally reveals the sexy scientist who is like, you know, clearly just been cast as the hot scientist so that Mulder can just be completely in awe of her immediately. And then not only that, not only do we have this the sexy scientist trope, and an actress who, frankly, like, is, you know, she's a guest star on a TV show. She kind of just sounds like an attractive actress who's trying to pretend to be a scientist. So it's very unconvincing in a way that a lot of these types of stereotypes characters tend to be. But very quickly, she starts like talking about how she, like, a lot of her research is about like proving like the truth behind UFOs, and I swear I started cackling with laughter as Mulder looked over at her. It's like this dream woman who is hot, but also believes in UFOs, but has specific theories of her own as to what creates the phenomena of UFOs. She thinks it's actually electromagnetic bugs that are creating light shows in the sky, and that's why they disappear so quick, and it's not actual ships from outer space. And then the other scientist puts in his head, oh, what if, like, if there is aliens out there, and there definitely is, right? This guy believes there's aliens, but they're not going to send, like, physical aliens, like actual flesh and blood aliens. No, they're going to have advanced technology because it's going to be easier to do it that way. They're going to send robotic forms, maybe insects or animals or humanoid, like, robots to investigate. And he's so sure of this, and Mulder's sitting there like, okay, maybe what I've seen is robots. Maybe it's not actual flesh and blood aliens. But he's like buying into this, like, head first. And then there's a scene where Scully's on the phone to him, and he basically says, hey, if we believe aliens could send, you know, advanced, like, probes from other planets and other sides of the galaxy, then what's to say they haven't also developed insects, robots that extract methane from dung because that's what they want, and there's plenty of that on Earth. There's so much methane, there's so much shit to extract methane from. And I love that he's having this conversation in front of the scientist lady who turns it over her shoulder and looks at him because he sounds like an absolute psychopath. And to be fair, this is an intentionally funny moment because Scully says, I think you've been in this town too long, and it is played for laughs. So they knew this wasn't them taking this seriously, which is good. They should have known this was ridiculous. But he has got off the deep end. He knows that the threat in the town is cockroaches, but he still runs towards a room with a scream with his gun in his hand. Like, this episode is just full of stupid shit. And I mean that in the most loving way I can possibly mean it. I was highly entertained throughout the majority of the runtime of this episode. And I really cannot sing the praises, but it's different from like a good episode. This is different from like one of the great episodes that I've praised. This is all about just how like relentlessly schlocky 90s TV this episode is, with all of its tropes and the fact that it combines so many weird tropes together. Like, there's so much going on here. And Scully's hilarious this episode as well, because she just kind of keeps getting these phone calls and reacting to it. And as soon as Mulder says, oh yeah, I met this scientist, and Scully refers to the scientist as a he, and Mulder's like, no, she thinks this, and she's like, she? And immediately I'm like, wait, Scully, are you jealous? He's not even said anything about her yet. Like, literally all he said is he met a scientist who talked about this stuff. He's not even said like a compliment yet. And Scully's already like, she. But then Mulder makes the mistake though of calling her by her first name. He calls her Bambi, and Scully's like, Bambi? Her name is and she says it like multiple times, no matter what Mulder says to her, like, Bambi? And the payoff to that is that when Scully does eventually arrive, and Bambi the scientist refers to Mulder as Fox, and she's like, Fox? I don't know where this weird jealousy came from. All of a sudden, like, I get they've got a connection, and I get, obviously, I think we're building to like their feelings growing over time and so on. I just don't know. Like, maybe it's genius in a lot of ways to just immediately have her get a little bit like petty, like, you know, be like, wait, you know what, Mulder, that does it. I'm coming to that town. Because at this point, she still hadn't left the house. She's like, no, you know what, I'm coming to that town. I've heard enough about this Bambi. Like, I'm putting a stop to this right now. No one's stealing my Mulder. Oh, this episode was gold. And again, not forget. And what I love about it is that like the town are kind of crazy, and that they already have conspiracy theories. There's a moment where the sheriff is basically saying he thinks there's some experiments going on that's leading to all these cockroaches. like they're government controlled cockroaches, and Mulder's like, you may want to keep the conspiracy theories, down low. Don't want to cause a panic, but clearly, pot, kettle, black, the very, very much in line. Anyway, to go back to the start a little bit here, because I went rambling at machine gun speed about everything crazy in this episode, but the episode even starts very tongue-in-cheek, because it starts off with this guy who's holding up a cockroach that he takes off like the wall or whatever, and he's like, to the cockroach, man is God, and we should act as any god would, and then he kills the cockroach or whatever, and then the reveal of the scene, though, is that because you think this guy's like some sort of scientist or maybe a professor in a university giving a lecture about insects or cockroaches. And it turns out he's just an exterminator. He's an exterminator who likes to talk very poetically as he's doing his work, which is already kind of like a gimmicky thing. And this is the first like kill of the episode, as this guy dies. And one of the things that keeps coming up is, and frankly, I don't think this is even that explained. I was expecting more of a reveal or a twist later on as to why this was happening, but almost every single kill that happens because of the cockroaches, all of them have very plausible reasons, because every single time Mulder calls Scully with a crime scene, she immediately suggests something, and it seems like it's probably true. Like, oh, this one guy had a heart attack, this one guy had an aneurysm, this one guy had a reaction to this one person went into anaphylactic shock. It feels like there's always a plausible thing that hasn't got really anything to do with the cockroaches themselves. And I thought there was going to be something to do with the cockroaches or being made to look these are all accidents, because the cockroaches also disappear immediately after they've killed. Like, the person who finds the body might see some cockroaches, but by the time Mulder gets to the room, they're all gone. Like, that's something that happens repeatedly in this episode. So I thought there was going to be more to that, and maybe that's also part of why this episode feels crazy, is that it does feel a little bit messy. Like, it throws so many ideas at the audience that not all of them really click together by the end. But again, I was along for the ride, I'll say that much. Like, I was having a good time. So Mulder's just in this town because of reported UFO sightings, and because he has to kill time with his apartment being fumigated. And the sheriff comes up to his car because he's just sitting there and says, "Hey, what are you doing here, buddy?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just sitting here looking up at the sky." And the sheriff's like, "Oh, you're waiting for your drug dealer? Is that who you were talking to on the phone?" And he was talking to Scully, of course. And she's like, "Give me some ID." And Mulder's like, "Yeah, all right. You're about to apologize to me. FBI badge." And he's like, you're with the Bureau? You're a Fed? Oh. That's not what he says, of course. I'm adding some color to the sequence, but I could see it in his eyes. He was like, "Oh, I'm expecting an apology from this asshole now." But while he's talking to him, the sheriff gets the call about the exterminator, and very quickly we get several more scenes of people dying. There's like a group of like teenagers who are like, they've got like a little chemistry lab set up, and they're trying to get high off a some I don't know. I don't know enough about drugs to know exactly what they were doing here, but it was involving methane or the shit or something, but or whatever. So the one teenager dies, and it's self-inflicted wounds, but the idea is that he thought he was trying to cut cockroaches out of himself, so it looks like he was just completely off his rocker. But Mulder, when he's investigating the scene, finds a cockroach that basically disintegrates in his hand, but he notices that it appears to be made of metal, or like there's at least metal parts to it. Like, there's something fishy here. Like, these are mechanical in some way. And it's like, okay, and this is the sheriff's like the one with the conspiracy theories, and Scully's not believing a word of this. And there is actually one sequence, one of the phone calls that Scully has with him early on kind of caught me. It was probably the first one, because it was when because they were still talking about aliens at this point. And she says that, Mulder, do you understand the probability that intelligent life exists somewhere out there? Like, how unlikely it is, given all the conditions that led to us existing on this planet, how unlikely it is for aliens to live out there? And I get that Scully is the skeptic, and I get that, yeah, there's a lot of conditions that need to be met to get to intelligent life. But I feel like, I'm like, yeah, but Scully, space is really big. There's a lot of planets. there's planets. How many planets do we not even know about that exist in the far reaches of space, in different systems? And like, I feel like her logic of this is equally countered by, yeah, but there's like so many, like space is really, really big, Scully, right? I know you love to be skeptical here, but like, and I'm not saying they're here on Earth, right? Like, real talk here. I'm saying the alien life of some kind probably exists somewhere because space is just that damn big. Will we ever find it? Will we ever, like, be able to confirm it? Probably not. I don't think so. Certainly not in my lifetime. But still, somewhere, probably. Right? I just, you know, this is probably the most believable thing there is as far as any conspiracy things go. So, anyway, that was a tangent. I wanted to complain about Scully's logic there. Anyway, so it's okay. And then one of the guys, like, at the police station dies in the toilet. He's sitting on the shitter reading something, and a cockroach comes in, and he's the one that looks like he has an aneurysm. And Scully says, "Look at his eye." And Mulder's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, yeah, that's a sign of aneurysm. Like, he probably was squeezing too hard. That's a common cause of aneurysms, apparently." Which, I'm not gonna lie, scared me a little bit. I'm like, oh, geez, okay, all right, never force it, right? Let it come naturally. If you're a little constipated, let it just, you know, play the waiting game. Don't push, right? Pushing causes aneurysms, apparently. I assume there's some other dominoes that are lined up before that will cause an aneurysm, but all the same, play it safe. Don't push too hard when you're on the toilet seat. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm amused by some of this dialogue. This is kind of fun. And I was thinking it's kind of weird that Scully's like just at home and constantly on the phone to him. I was starting to wonder, is like, because at this point we hadn't gotten to the scientist lady yet, we hadn't got to Bambi. I was thinking, was there some weird production thing here where, like, you know, maybe she couldn't film on location this time, or there's something. You know, Gillian Anderson, I don't know, had jury duty during the day or something, so they had to only film her at a set in like a couple of days when she was away for the rest of the week and a half or whatever it was. I don't know. My mind was just sort of like coming up with like logistical reasons as to why she had to be separated in this episode, because it felt so random and, like I say, just kind of weird. But then Mulder goes to this location the sheriff told him about, sneaks in, sees a bunch of cockroaches, although don't try and kill them. They end up being harmless, but they're supposed to be here, and that's when scientist, or Dr. Bambi, comes into the scene. And immediately he's like, you know, staring at her, and there's all these little moments where she's looking at the telescope. And not only do we get her talking about UFOs and, you know, saying, oh, this is why I think, you know, because she actually says the line, oh, it's to do with UFOs, and he looks over at her and you can see his eyes lighting up, and she's like, I don't know if you know much about UFOs, but I believe this. And she starts talking about her theories about how, like, it's actually bugs or insects or cockroaches that are causing these phenomena. And the line, I don't know how much you know about UFOs, just really popped me. It really made me laugh, and like Mulder just like, I think Mulder was like planning an engagement ring right then and there. It felt like he was staring in awe. But not only that, when he gets a specimen from a crime scene, I think it must be the one at the motel. One of the guys in the motel snuffs it, and he's able to find one cockroach, and he brings it to Dr. Bambi, and Dr. Bambi looks at it, and one of the first things she says is she reacts like, whoa, and Mulder's like, what was it? Is it not a normal cockroach? And she's like, no, it's hung like a dragonfly. I think that was the other thing she used, but either way, she's talking about how big the cockroach's dick is. So not only do we have all the natural, like, you know, hot scientists into UFOs, now we're talking about genitalia, just like out in the open constantly. So we're just like, it's almost like we're pushing them into it. It's almost a porn scene without the sex part, where they're like, you know, we're pushing towards the sex happening. We never get there, but it feels like we're kind of inching towards it. So that's going on. And one of the running things here as well with Scully is that when Mulder hangs up, when he gets scared by the cockroaches and Dr. Bambi first appears, he just says he has to go quickly, and Scully's like, Mulder! And, you know, she's concerned because he was scared, and like he said, there was cockroaches which have been linked to other deaths. Even if she doesn't believe the cockroaches are responsible, she's still concerned for him. He puts himself in danger like he always does. Scully phones back whilst he's talking to Dr. Bambi and like during this whole UFO talk, and Mulder answers the phone and says, "Not now," and hangs right up. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't, like, give her a chance to speak. He just says, "Not now," and hangs up. And poor Scully, the next time we see her, Mulder's back at the motel. It's before the other guy in the motel in the other room dies. Mulder is on, he wakes up, he can't sleep, so he calls Scully. And Scully, it's like daytime where she is, so I guess she's closer to the East Coast. But like, she's waking up in bed and she's holding the phone. She's literally hugging the phone in bed. And she immediately says, "Mulder, are you okay?" And I'm like, Mulder, you're being such a dick right now. You didn't even call her to let you know you're okay before you went to the motel and went to bed? Are you kidding me? Like, forget the jealousy stuff with the doctor lady. Like, I mean, this alone is just kind of dickish behavior. But then again, he ends up hanging up the phone when something happens because Mulder hears the scream of the guy that's being killed in the other room. So once again, Scully's left kind of hanging on a moment of a cliffhanger. And he calls her back quicker this time because he calls her when he's investigating the crime scene or whatever. But like, it felt like this running thing. So we finally see Scully like packing her bag before she leaves pretty soon after that. And when she's on the way into town, stories have spread about cockroaches leading to people dying. So there's a panic at the store where everyone's like raiding the shelves and they're grabbing the cans of bug spray, which leads to a fight between two ladies trying to get the last one. And when Scully comes in and there's like people up front, because she's just asking for a map to get to where she's going, and there's people at the counter like saying, "Oh, the cockroaches are going to get us, they're going to get us," and they're like running out with all their supplies and stuff. Scully like gets annoyed, pulls out her badge and yells, "Excuse me, can I have your attention? I'm with the FBI. You're all acting irrationally. There's nothing to be scared of. There's no danger," which I don't necessarily know if that's true, given that we have seen a lot of people be killed by this point in the episode. But she's like, "Hey, everyone calm down." And then a fight breaks out anyway over the last can of bug spray. And Scully's left standing in this store alone. Like, even the person who works here has ran out the building. There was also a car that hit another car on the outside as she was walking in. It's just chaos. And at this point in the episode, I'm like, this episode is nuts. There's so much going on. There's so much stuff happening. Like the sense of momentum, while some details feel a little bit lost in the shuffle, and it was hard to remember what Mulder's theory even was by the time he was saying it over the phone. Like, when he was saying, "Hey, what if aliens did this and they built things to extract methane and they sent, bugs or whatever, or robots looking like bugs," he got to the end of the sentence and I was like, I'm not even sure how that started. I'm not even sure what his theory was by the end. I was so caught up in all of the different crazy sounding parts of it that I couldn't even like encapsulate like what the whole theory was by the end. And I don't think it matters in this case because it is just batshit. And at least to the funny line where Scully says, "I think you've been in this town too long," which comes right after this scene in the store. So she's like, "Hey, this town's crazy. Everyone's acting nuts. What are we going to do here?" So, all fun. The other thing is that when Dr. Bambi looks at the cockroach and sees that there's mechanical parts in the exoskeleton, she says, "Hey, there's a scientist, like an engineer, robotic scientist who works over at this place, also in this same town, which is a relatively small town." That's wild. And Mulder goes to this place, and the first thing he sees is a robot, but it's like a robot with like legs like a spider or an insect, where it's like, but it's like made out of like metal. It's very obviously a robot. There's nothing realistic looking about it, but it's got these like goofy eyes, and it looks at Mulder as it's going past the door. And this was the moment where I just had like a breakdown and said, "What the hell is this episode?" and started cackling with laughter. Like, it was just like, now there's these robots walking around, and then 2 seconds later in wheels discount Stephen Hawking to explain his robot research. And then somehow his robot research ties into UFOs and aliens, just to once again make Mulder instantly fall in love with the person he's talking to. But this guy's like, "Oh, they wouldn't send flesh and blood aliens. They'd send robots. They'd send this, that, whatever." And Mulder's listening like, "Oh, this guy's got points. I think I could get on board with some of these ideas. This is very, very interesting stuff." But he it's funny though, because he says that anyone who believes they would send flesh and blood aliens with big eyes has been watching too much science fiction. But he does admit at the end of the episode that he, in fact, likes science fiction a lot. So I'll get to that in a second. But damn, I mean, there's so much going on. Because the episode open and close with a quote from Planet of the Apes, which comes back up at the end. But Anyway. So this is what gives Mulder all of his crazy ideas. Scully's coming into town, and it all kind of wraps back around. Scully's figured out that the guy who was getting his house fumigated, or the exterminator was in at the start, right? The guy who was scared in that scene, who I've not even mentioned yet, really, but there was a guy who lived there when the exterminator died who got scared. He went to the motel, so he was also in the motel when the guy screamed. He was out in the hallway, like freaking out about the cockroaches coming for him. Turns out he works in like experimental fuel development, and he's been working with gases. He's been working with importing different types of feces from all over the world to try and experiment new ways of power or something. I don't know, but it's like, okay, maybe this is how the exotic insects got here, and forgetting the mechanical parts, that's just kind of open for interpretation. And at one point, Mulder picks up a cockroach and says, "Greetings from Earth," as we get this POV shot from the cockroach. Just if you need any more confirmation, this episode's absolutely off its tits insane. Anyway, the big showdown happens when Mulder goes to see this guy at his place of work, and now he's scared and he's paranoid, and he's in his building with a gun, and he's scared the cockroaches are coming for him. To the point where he believes Mulder might be one of the aliens that have brought the cockroaches, and when Mulder's phone goes off, when Scully arrives and tries to call him, the beep, he thinks that's like some sort of signal to the cockroaches, and he starts opening fire, which leads to hitting some methane pipes, which leads to the building exploding, and Mulder and Scully come running out and get covered in a shower of shit. Not to gloss over, Scully arriving and seeing Bambi and be like, "Oh, you must be Bambi," and there's just a little bit of attitude in her voice, and then obviously the fox name drop from Bambi also got a good reaction. And then the weird like payoff to all this is the next day, the sheriff's saying there's been no more reports of cockroach related deaths, although there's been a lot of trouble with rioting and looting and fights that have broken out leading to accidents and whatnot. They think, oh, is this over now? Is everything kind of died down now that all these like potential cockroaches have been killed? Maybe, if that's where they're coming from, even. I don't know, it's strange. But the payoff here is that the scientist shows up, right? So Bambi's already there. She was with them because Mulder brought her here in the first place. The other scientist, the old guy in the wheelchair, he shows up, right, with his voice box. And he's like, "Hey, Agent Mulder, could I have another sample of those insects, exoskeletons to like analyze?" And he's like, "Yeah, but they've already like disintegrated, so there's not much there. It's just common metals, but sure, you can have it." And the comedy payoff to these like guest characters is that they kind of hit it off together. And like immediately Bambi's like, "Oh, I'm in awe of your work, Doctor. I've been such a fan of it." And they start talking about like aliens coming to Earth and their theories and whatever. But like I think she quotes Planet of the Apes, or maybe he does, and like the other one's like, "Oh, that's Planet of the Apes." Like, "Oh, you like science fiction? Oh, I love science fiction." And then they just kind of like go off together, talking about their love of science fiction and their belief of aliens coming to Earth. And it lingers on the shot a long time of them going away, where I thought it was just going to cut to the credit right there and then. And it finally cut back to Mulder and Scully, and I don't know, Scully has like a one-liner, I think, but it was just like a weird like, "Oh, sorry." Yeah, 'cause she says something about, "Oh, maybe by the time these alien insects will have returned, the grandkids of these two will be able to fight them because they've been studying them their whole lives," or something. Like she makes a little witty line to sort of like commiserate that, Mulder's lost his hot scientist. And then that's kind of it, other than a little epilogue where Mulder's writing a report talking about robotic insects and aliens. And the episode ends with him smashing a cockroach on his table, which was going after his food, which you knew was going to happen because he was eating while he was writing this report on his computer. Like he was reaching over and eating a bit of cake like every so often. And I'm like, the only reason why you would do this is because you want a cockroach to be on the plate when he looks over by the end. And sure enough, that's what happens. And he crushes it with what appears to be an X-file, just to but he gives it a little bit of a look for a minute to see if it's like a regular cockroach, or is it possibly some sort of alien thing. Is he now going to look at every cockroach he sees and wonder, are you an advanced, scout for your alien party, right? And notably, this episode, I believe, would have been before Men in Black, because I think if most people who associate like aliens actually being cockroaches kind of thing probably think of Men in Black. This episode, I think, predated that, so worth mentioning. Not enough that I'm saying Men in Black ripped it off or stole any ideas from it by any stretch. Plus, Men in Black was based on a comic, I think, so that would have existed already. But it's just kind of interesting. All I'm saying is that this episode wasn't made because Men in Black was a hit. It just so happens to have some insecty stuff in it anyway. Whoa, okay, there was a lot going on in there. It's kind of just a wild plot, and it's just kind of bamboozling constantly in a way that I found entertaining. It's kind of the schlocky 90s TV that I can really get on board with, because it never lingered, it never felt like it slowed down for any reason. And well, if it was trying to tell me a really good story that I cared about, that might be a problem, because it was just like a machine gun of ridiculous plot ideas and character reactions. Meanwhile, Mulder and Scully were entertaining throughout the whole time, especially Scully of the two. Like her reactions to things were good. There was even like a moment when she was on the phone when she first hears about Bambi, and she says, "Bambi?" Like the first time she questions the name, she almost looked like a teenage girl in her bedroom getting jealous of a boy, right? And what I mean by that is, like, obviously, I'm not saying she looks 15 years younger all of a sudden. I mean, she, like, just the way it's shot, the way she kind of sinks into her pillow, she's holding the cordless phone, just really reminded me of like a lot of teen movies, or characters in movies where they're teenagers talking in their bedrooms on a phone. That's what it made me think of for a split second, and then she kind of became Scully again. But for a little minute, she became like the jealous teenage girl, and I thought that was like just like a fun bit. Is it right for Scully? I don't know, but it made for a fun, entertaining episode. I like it's so weird. Like, as it was getting crazier, I'm like, oh, this episode's stupid. But as it was getting stupid, I was enjoying it more and more. So it's really hard to critique this in any way, other than just to say that it was constantly engaging me. I was constantly entertained by what was happening, and I was quite happy that I watched it by the end. Which, if that's all we need for a success story, then, like, if this is all the show was, like every episode, it would probably eventually get tiring or disappointing. But this was like such a nice breath of fresh air of just wildness after, maybe some middling episodes recently. What was the last one? Yeah, Revelations was, it was a bit middling and didn't quite get where it needed to be. So, no, I'm all for a whaled episode like this every once in a while. As long as it can keep up the crazy factor the way this one did, I'll have a good time. So, that is my thoughts on more of the Coprophages from season 3 of X-Files. And again, I'm not sure if I'm saying that word right. Coprophages? Who knows? Anyway, next up on X-Files, we have an episode called, speaking of pronouncing things, weird, Syzygy? 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 I don't know what you make of that, but here's the description on IMDb. A rare alignment of the planets gives two teenage girls homicidally dangerous telekinetic powers while simultaneously driving their small town insane with satanic panic. Mulder's interest in the local female detective makes Scully jealous. Wait a minute, wait! Okay, can I feel like a lot of that sounded quite similar to this one. Obviously, the telekinetic powers is very different from Cockroaches, but the town get into a panic, albeit satanic panic, which is a bit more specific. And then the jealousy, is this going to be a running thing? Was this episode the start of a trend of Scully getting jealous of Mulder being interested in other women? Because if that's going to be a running thing, then we're building to something there, I guess. I do think it sounds entertaining and crazy, at the very least. I hope that I'm still entertained by some of the things that might feel repetitious. Now, it just sounds repetitious on paper, some of it. It may not feel that close in actuality when I actually sit down to watch it. But just based on a lot of things I talked about in this episode, by the time I got to the end of that description, I felt like we were hitting a lot of the same notes. But it sounds like another fun one, potentially. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, that'll be next time on X-Files. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. Of course, if you want to support all the content, you can do that via patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership if that's more your thing. But if you go to Patreon, you get all the bonuses for all the movie podcasts and stuff. Check out MailFuzz Movies for all those podcasts themselves. or you can get them in podcast feeds for those if you'd like. But that is the show. Thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?